Hello and welcome, and I'm here today with Vuslat, who's a wonderful Turkish-born artist, former journalist. She's got the most extraordinary CV, and we are here to talk about the work in her new exhibition, only really her second exhibition, at the Dixon Museum in Turkey. Vuslat, it's a great pleasure.
Thank you.
To meet
Thank you,
you.
Andrew.
But tell me about yourself and art, because it seems to me to be a remarkable journey to start as a journalist, then become, in effect, somebody running a huge media empire, and then to become an artist, a humble artist, working on sculpture made from clay and plants and quite poor materials. What is the nature of this journey? How have you come to be on it?
Well, when I go back to my childhood, I had my crayons everywhere. And I remember exactly who bought me as a present something related to art. I remember exactly those people. Like going back, I feel like they saw me. But I had other responsibilities in life. When I was time to graduate from my school and time to make decision about what to do in life, it wasn't even a decision to make. It was that there was a responsibility I needed to take, and I felt I could take it on. That's what I did for a long time. But, you know, your essence talks to you, and it bugs you in times that you're not prepared for it. And at a time like that, I had a dream. And in my dream, I was working with clay. I was doing sculpture. And I was in an incredible space of freedom. It was just like a magical space. I woke up driving to the newspaper headquarters then. But in my mind, I was like, in that dream, that night, I came home. I put the boys to sleep. At 9 p.m., I had a teacher, an artist friend, teaching me how to work with clay. And that's how it started.
Wow.
And for a very long time, it was a private process for me. It was completely private in my own space.
May I ask, when was it this, you were being driven to work, and you went to sleep in the car, you had this dream. When was that? I mean, how many years ago?
It was 15 years ago.
So 15 years ago, because that's the other unusual thing. Well, everything about you, it strikes me, as pretty unusual. But one of the things
it is a compliment.
it is a compliment. And one of the things that this sort of, as it were, late cultivation of this talent means for you is that you've got this exhibition at Bax, at the museum there, which is really quite an extensive exhibition. But it's only a year, I think, after your first exhibition. So you're really only in your second year of exhibiting your work. First at a private gallery in London, now at a very public space in your homeland of Turkey. So it's rather remarkable. How does it feel?
It's also surprising for me. It's a new. Everything's new about it. I mean, making art in your private space is so much different than showing it. But then there's a place you become super comfortable with yourself. I wasn't intending to show, really. I was, of course, one side of me, of course, always wanted to share. But I wasn't making plans for it. It became a little bit coincidental. At the time of COVID, I met a great curator. And I said, why don't you come? I'll show you something. And I took her to my studio and she had no idea. We were meeting for a different reason. That encouragement and then the offer I got from P Gallery in London and so forth. And it all started unfolding.
Started to flow. I mean,
Yes.
I have to say, from a sort of impartial outsider perspective, having seen the work in the London show and having seen the work in the Baxa exhibition, it strikes me that the London show is almost, to me, as if you're clearing your throat, you're getting ready to speak, whereas this exhibition, the new one, you are really speaking and using a lot of different words and a lot of different expressions and phrases and really exploring quite a large world. In that first year, you were really focused on this idea of what happens when two shapes combine. But now it's like you've thrown away that discipline or that limitation and you've gone somewhere quite different.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I love hearing that. I love hearing that because that's also how I feel. I feel like I am more courageous to express. I feel more free. I feel expanded in my space as an artist.
There's quite a wide range of feeling in the work, it seems to me. Again, quite a lot wider than there was in the earlier exhibition, in the sense that some of the work, like the broken piece, seems to be quite reflective on aspects of damage or aspects of violence that take place in the world, whereas that kind of sense of darkness that was certainly, I'm sure, present in a lot of your reporting when you were involved in the news world, that I hadn't had any sense of that in your art work. But now that seems to be there. And then on the other hand, you've got a lot of work that seems to me very much about touching nature and being healed perhaps by that contact. But there's an interesting dynamic there between dark and light.
That broken piece is a piece when I made it at the time of the earthquake, a bit before the earthquake, but it got completed there. I think what we keep what we make of history, what we make of knowing is our consciousness, what we know by, what we keep in our memory. But then we push back some of the things we know, and that stays in our subconsciousness, and we forget. And forgetting is not helping people. There's a common saying, forgiveness is a virtue. It's freeing yourself, freeing your soul, but not being forgetful. We need to remember the pain. We need to remember our broken sides. We need to remember what we did wrong, our vulnerabilities, to be more authentic and to grow. And at the time of the earthquake, when we had this devastating earthquake in Turkey, it's not the first time we're having it, but we keep on forgetting it. Because it's hard to hold on to that pain and continue with that pain. But if we can remember that pain, keep it in our consciousness, then we evolve, we improve, we progress.
Yeah, I mean, some people might say that is one of the most important functions of art, is to make sure that people don't forget. I particularly think in relationship to German art after the Second World War, a lot of artists were just somehow trying to pretend as if all of that stuff had not happened. The Holocaust, it had never happened. And then artists such as Kiefer and Baselitz, the reason I suspect that they've been so valued by posterity is because they did tell everybody in Germany, we must never forget these things. So there's that, I suppose that's a traditional function of art. You also use the word emanet, which is partly, I suppose, about not forgetting a gift that you've been given, not forgetting your responsibility. But that from talking to you in the past, I've gathered that this is a very, very important concept for you.
Yes, it's a concept that it's always been important, but I realized the importance of it when I started working on this exhibition. My parents, for generations, are from this region, which is a very remote region in the northeast of Turkey.
This is the region where the museum is. Yeah.
But it's also my parents' hometown, also where my roots are from. So it's a coincidence. And as I was working on the exhibition, diving deep in the geography, the history of the region, the oral history, because I read a lot of fairy tales, reinterpreted one, also the value system of the region and so forth. Because when I start working on a concept, there are different streams of thought. And for each, I keep a notebook. And this notebook that I started keeping for emanet started having roots everywhere. The meaning of emanet is protecting something, safeguarding it with utmost tenderness, care, as if it's yours.
Something you've been given.
Something you've been given, and taking care of that something, which is emanet, with utmost care, as if it is yours, even better than what's yours. For example, we say, I can give you, giving children as emanet to each other is an important concept in Turkey. And if your child is given to me, if you give your child to me as an emanet,
what, to stay in your house or to go,
yes,
to, go to you for a week on holiday?
Friends of mine sent their daughter, who was Yela, 15 years old, to stay with us and go to have an experience of 1 year to go to school in Istanbul. And I have same year boys, 16, 14, 15.
Right.
I wanted to, because that's take Yela, better care of Yela, even than my kids, because she's an emanet to me.
Yeah,
that's how.
So it's like a bond of trust.
It's a bond of trust. And in that bond of trust, there's really a super important bond or connection. It's a connection that opens each other, the humanity, or what's good with humanity, and how do we live together also. It's the roots of the word is from Aramaic, and the word is pronounced the same in Hebrew, in Arabic, in Greek, in I think in Armenian, in Kurdish, in many different languages. So it's a very ancient.
So these, for example, if I was trying to understand how that idea perhaps feeds into some of the work in your exhibition, you have a series of very beautiful works made out of, I think, river plants or riverside plants, which have been, looks to me as though they've been put in an electrolyte substance so that they've been coated in silver. Is that an example of where you are, so to speak, taking care of something that nature has called to your attention? And is it your way of speaking about how these humble, ordinary plants, look how beautiful they are? Look how, I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing. Would that make any sense to you as an interpretation?
Yes, it would. I think the greatest emanet, one of the very precious emanet to all of us as humans, are children and nature, because they don't have the same language we do. They don't speak and express themselves as we do. So we need to be really super tender with them. And we dismiss most of the time. When I was walking around the museum in that region, I saw these plants. It was autumn then, so they were almost dry. And I looked up and took the plant out, and I saw another form underneath the ground. So the roots and then the top, and it was an unbelievable form. So as an artist, first I was super attracted with the form. And after a few treatments, I coated it in silver because it represents infinity. Not only to cherish them and to show how we can just dismiss this beautiful plant and not see it. Every day we see it. I asked to the villagers, I said, what do you do? What is this plant called? And what do you do with it? They are healing plants. They're good for scars. They're good for chest congestion. And they're just gorgeous, beautiful.
How interesting. Yeah, so that's, and I have a feeling that there's, tell me if I'm wrong, but I sense that there might be a kind of kinship between that aspect of your work and an Italian artist who I like very much called Giuseppe Pennone, who makes very beautiful work that seems to me often about the growth of a tree or a natural process that sometimes maybe we just overlook. I remember a beautiful piece of his, which is just a room completely full of fallen leaves. So you can't hear anything because the leaves have this amazing effect to make the room completely silent. So it just creates a space for reflection on your position to nature. And I just had a feeling that maybe, he might be an artist that you've looked at, that you are interested in.
It's an honor, first of all, to hear this, because Giuseppe Pennone is an artist that I really admire, his work.
Oh, good. Oh,
yes.
No, I just had a feeling that you might be interested in him, particularly from those works, because I hadn't seen it in your earlier marble works. Really, it hadn't made me think that, but the new work, it did. So you have. He's one of the people that you hold in your heart.
Yes. Very much.
Great. No, that's very interesting. And tell me a little bit about this rather extraordinary piece that looks like a kind of coiled umbilical cord in the middle of the exhibition. What does that piece have its own story?
It does. I don't perceive life as a linear line. I perceive it in spirals. I feel like we always turn and draw circles and move in spirals to meet, to connect. And I like that coincidental meetings as well. So, and I see life in that spirals. And I said I'm going to do a spiral here, but I don't know or what and how. And my grandmother, I got inspired by my grandmother's chain that she gave me a few months before she passed away.
Right.
And I had that chain for many years, and I didn't know what to do with it. But it came right before the exhibition. That chain is made of, that installation, that piece, which is called the umbilical cord of life. So it's between birth and death. We do have that. Life is that umbilical cord. And we do move in spirals. And I enlarged my grandmother's chain, golden chain that she gifted me. And it was also very interesting to do it because the chain, there's a very specific place where you can really lock the two chains into each other, and they don't come out. So it's really a learning also to lock it.
So difficult one. But I suppose there's also that, to my eye, there's also, knowing what you just said, I can't help thinking about that chain that your grandmother also passed you, the one that you can't really see, which is your DNA chain, which is, of course, the demonstration of life as a spiral.
Yes.
Which also perhaps was present, but you never know with a work of art how much is in your mind consciously. I sometimes write things, so I'm not a visual artist, but a writer, but I sometimes write things and find that I only really understand my meaning some years later when I think about what I was doing then. And you don't always necessarily...
Yes, aware
do you know what
of
I mean?
that, yes.
Yeah. Do you find that?
I find that a lot. For example, with the chain also, it was speaking to me. I wanted to use it somewhere, something, but I didn't know. I wrote about it. But then it appears in the right time, and then the connection. You look back, and then you can realize when it came up and why. So this exhibition is a lot about my grandmother.
This is making me think, isn't there also feeding into all of this with the idea of the emanette, the gift that is not quite a gift, it's more of a sacred trust and so on, and your grandmother, isn't there also a story, like a fairy story from the region that draws some of these strands or chains together?
Yes, there's a story that I ran into the story. I found the story again as I was researching the old fairy tales of the region. And when I read the story, you can't believe how excited I got because I had glimpses of the story. Some parts of it I remembered, some parts of it was blank, but I remembered exactly my grandmother telling me parts of it with her super soft hands, telling me about this little naughty sparrow and look what she has done to the whole village,
Caused chaos.
Caused chaos, with big drama and chaos to the whole village. Now I read the story, I started living with the story for some time, researching it and living with it. And I arrived to a deeper meaning of the story.
If I may, this is the story where the sparrow has a thorn in his foot, and he goes to the lady baking bread and says, "Please take the thorn, but keep it for me." And she says, "Yes, I'll keep it for him," but she doesn't. He comes back and says, "Where is it?" And she says, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And he takes all her bread, and then he gives the bread to somebody else, and they don't look after it, they eat it. So then he takes the sheep from the shepherd who's eaten the bread, and then he gives the sheep and eventually he ends up with a bride at a wedding. So the sparrow gets let down again and again and again, and the people always have to give him a higher price each time. Now, I think it's a wonderful story, but I can't say exactly what it means. What's its meaning to you?
The interpretation was, the greedy sparrow, naughty sparrow, gave the thorn, took the bread, gave the bread, took the sheep, and then as a crescendo, it's...
Yeah.
But really, it's not a naughty sparrow. It's a wise sparrow. In my story, it goes to the mountain, Kaf Mountain, and comes back and becomes a phoenix, talks to the phoenix, and then comes back. It's a wise sparrow, and that wise sparrow is giving us an invitation to understand how we become better humans. So just keeping the emanet of a little sparrow, which we can all dismiss so easily, we are given an invitation to see the goodness in our hearts. So
are you saying, so if the Ottoman emperor gives me a bar of gold, of course I'll look after it. That's easy. What's really hard is to have a big enough heart that you'll look after the thorn of the little sparrow, who's not important, who has no power.
Exactly. Thank you very much. You've summarized it very, very clearly.
So it's about humility.
It's not about humility, seeing that, and the bond that we can create and the connection that will feed us. Ego feeds us. We know that. Owning more, feeding our ego, that gives us pleasure. We're humans. We know that. We agree that. There's another way also to get contentment. This is what the sparrow is telling us. And nature is giving us generously all the time. And we're dismissing nature. Nature is giving us all the beauty, all the wisdom. There's just abundant of beauty and invitations and so forth.
And often in things that are quite poor, quite humble, you could just walk past them. May I ask, is that one of the reasons why using the material of clay is important to you at the moment? Seems to be important. There's quite a lot of the work in the show. Yeah. It's the most humble. It's like the sparrow, if you like, of the sculpture materials. It's a nothing material. It's very poor. Yes. It's not like gold or
marble or bronze.
Exactly. Is that part of your reason for working with that?
It is. It gives me a great connection to earth. And it's always been my prime material. Preparing in the London show, not only before preparation as well, I did do bronze and marble, and I love experimenting with different materials. I'm not someone that would an artist that would continue with the same material all the time. But clay is a necessary, a vital material for me because it grounds me. It humbles me also. It humbles me because you can't create things exactly like you want to do. You have to go into a conversation with clay and you have to let space for it to be what it is. And it cracks out of the blue. You don't know because of the wind, because of this, because of that. And you say, oh, I did exactly the same. How did this not happen?
Do you work, when you work with clay, do you work with the material on a wheel? I mean, do you work like a potter? Or what's your process, or do you have different processes?
I have different processes, but I don't work with a potter, not much. I work with a torment.
So you get your hands, you get covered in
Yes, of course.
Clay.
That's the best part.
And do you have any pieces that are particularly close to your heart in this show that are made of the clay? Are there any pieces that particularly you feel, where you got what you wanted, really 10 out of 10?
The piece that's called Emanet is the first piece I made for this show. And it was, I made it even before I got an invitation for this show. And that is very dear to me. Then I wanted to experience with very big sizes of clay. Because size also, super big sizes. And I hadn't done super big sizes with clay. It's difficult. And I went into very different, I tried different techniques, how it could work, the oven and everything. The three pieces, Once Upon a Land, Once Upon a Time, Once Upon a Dream. For the first time, those three separate forms, I placed them together also to talk to each other like an installation, because they complete a story, I think. And they talk about this place where we are not sure if it's real or not, if it is fact or not, if it happened or not, all those questions, because if this is really history or not. So in that world where it's in between, those are new pieces for me.
Would I be mad to see some kind of bird, perhaps a mythical bird or a fairy tale bird of some kind, swooping and circling in some of the drawings, some of the very large drawings that you've made for the exhibition?
You wouldn't be. Yes, I think some of them gives that. Yeah, it appears and disappears in the drawings. Yes,
in a spiral. So yeah. And what are your hopes going forward? Are you going to continue, do you think, mostly working in sculpture? Might you do some painting, or what do you think the future holds?
I started drawing to look for forms. So it's been always mainly sculpture, but to look for forms, drawing has always been there. I always had that. But over time, my drawings also became a different expression by themselves. And in this exhibition, in the drawings, I mixed charcoal with pastel, but I also used the natural pigments that I made from earth and rocks. I love it. I think I will also always keep drawing and painting in my art.
I have the idea that you seem to be on a path that might take you to working with a wider range of natural materials, perhaps, as well, as you've begun to do with those river plants that are also healing plants. That feels to me like a sort of future direction that could be quite fruitful for you.
Yes, I don't want to use any synthetics. Yes, the more and more I try to go into natural and see what we can do, what I can create with them. Having said that, there's more I want to explore in colors. And I think that's why drawing and even maybe painting will be interesting for me.
Yeah. Although there are natural colours
yes.
you can use. Natural pigments.
Yes. Yes, there's so much.
There's a lot that can be done.
I couldn't believe the vivid yellow that I produced out of the earth. I couldn't believe how vivid, how bright
natural colours can be extraordinary.
Is.
There was an artist I used to love years ago called Wolfgang Leip, who was a German land artist. He only worked with, at that point when I saw his work, he was only working with the pollen of bees. And he would gather this pollen. It would take him like a month to get enough to make one small work of art. But the yellow, the colour was just incredible. It was almost like it came from God. It really something.
It's fascinating. Also the process of that rock brings that pigment. Like that process, you ground it, all that is also fascinating.
Yes, I think there's always been a connection, although it sometimes gets forgotten in our technological world. There's always been a connection between the idea of art and transformation, and the artist, somebody who makes transformation happen. And that's a kind of magic involved. So
alchemy.
It's not far from an artist to be a magician or an alchemist or some other worker of magic spells. What do you hope people will make of your? Do you have is there a response that you would hope people would have to your work?
Yes, of course I would I would love, I hope that they realize, they explore these sensations, this visual, also visceral and sensational and emotions that they haven't discovered about themselves, within themselves or with nature also. They become curious about the ordinary nature when they look at nature, when they look at a tree, when they look at a flower, they become more curious about it. And then also to discover those feelings which I put in my art. I discovered my own feelings and made that art and put it there. I hope they add their own feelings, and then that starts the conversation.
Yeah. Well, maybe in some strange, unpredictable way, you've drawn a line between when you started as a journalist. Because I remember when you've written about your experiences as a journalist, going to write articles, being very tired, talking to some poor woman who was telling you about all her problems and finding that you couldn't really write, but you could listen. And I had that very strong sense that that's part of the idealism of the journalist, is that if you make that into a story that people really want to read, you might actually change something. You might change people's attitudes to the rights of women or whatever it might be. Listening to you just talking about your art now, it seems to me again that what you want is perhaps just to change a little bit how somebody thinks about the world. They read the story or they look at the sculpture, and that makes a change, which seems to be what most artists probably would want.
Yes. And I feel like I embarked on a new journey that I will be on for a few years with Emanet, because it's just so rich. I was able to just show part of it, but there's so many other places that it goes. It's like the rhizomes. So I feel like there's a lot more for me to explore. And I also feel that it's an ancient notion, and you feel like it belongs to old times, but it's super relevant and needed. It's very necessary for today's world, how we connect to life, everything around us, and how do we connect to nature, to each other. And if we can hold each other as an emanet to each other, it really unlocks the secret of living together. It gives a good clue. I also want to be in this as myself with my being in life, and explore this as an artist.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Vuslat.
you.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
It's been a great pleasure, Andrew. Thank you.